So here's something wild. Ryan Coogler made a movie about vampires set in the 1930s Mississippi, shot it on the same ultra-wide film format that was used for Ben-Hur, and somehow turned it into one of the most important films about black American music and the Great Migration that we have ever seen. And yes, it's also got Michael B. Jordan fighting himself. This is Sinners, and if you walked out of the film thinking it was just a cool period horror movie, you missed about 7 layers of meaning that Coogler buried in every single frame. Let's break it down. The film opens in total darkness, and then you hear the voice of Annie telling you the rules of this universe before you have seen a single image. She's talking about a gift, a hereditary ability to make music so true, so pure that it can literally pierce the veil between life and death. And here's where Coogler does something very genius. Annie doesn't just say that it is a black thing or an American thing. She tells you that in Ireland, people with this gift are called Fili. In Choctaw culture, they are firekeepers. In West Africa, they are griots. So what is Coogler doing here? He's saying that this film is not just about the blues. This is about a universal human power that exists across cultures. The ability to channel something so real through sound that it touches the supernatural. And yes, it brings healing, but Annie also warns you that it attracts the evil. That's the thesis statement of the entire film right there. Music is a spiritual technology, and like any powerful tool, it can summon things you might not be ready for. Then we jump forward. It's October 16th, 1932. Sammy stumbles into his father's church holding nothing but the broken neck of a guitar covered in blood. His father demands him to drop that guitar and renounce his sinning ways. Right there, Coogler sets up the central tension of the film: the church versus the blues, the sacred versus the profane. But here's what's brilliant about this movie. By the end, Coogler doesn't pick a side. He shows you they are the same thing, two different ways of surviving the same nightmare.
More time I spend with y'all, the less sure I am you boys are serious about it.
Ain't no boys here. I just grown men. With grown men money.
So we flash back 24 hours and meet the twins, Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan, and this look genius. Like, this is insane, and I'll tell you how they pulled this off. So these two show up in Mississippi dressed in sharp Chicago suits, looking completely out of place in the dust and heat. They are buying an old sawmill from a white landowner named Hogwood, and immediately you see blood stains on the floor. Hogwood tries to play it off like it's nothing, but Smoke sees right through it. This building has a history, a violent history. Then Smoke pays cash, money he made working for Al Capone up in Chicago. And then he says something to Hogwood that sets the tone for everything.
And if we see you or any one of your clan buddies cross our property line, we gonna kill them right where they stand.
Hogwood laughs, says the clan doesn't exist anymore, which is of course a lie, and that lie is the human threat hanging over the entire film. Okay, so before moving forward, I want to share a little detail. The red and blue color palettes used for Smoke and Stack in Sinners actually mean something. Blue is often linked to the spiritual world, which is why Smoke and Annie are mostly shown wearing blue shades in the film. Blue also represents calmness, wisdom, and sadness. That sadness fits perfectly here because both Smoke and Annie are still grieving the loss of their child. Meanwhile, red represents blood, life, and a sense of darkness. That idea is reinforced by how Stack is often filmed in heavy shadows, something the cinematographer Autumn uses a lot. Red is also linked to power, danger, passion, and sexuality, which fits perfectly with Stack and his relationship with Mary. And here's one more thing. Smoke and Stack are dressed in a very similar way, but their suits still say a lot about who they are. Their looks feel like a nod to classic mob styles, with Stack dressed more like an Italian mobster, while Smoke resembles the traditional Irish look. And later in the film, Mary even points out that they robbed both the Italians and the Irish in Chicago before returning to the Mississippi Delta. This has to be my favorite detail from this film. Moving forward, there's this very important conversation in the film between twin brothers and their cousin Sammy. Sammy asks them about Chicago. He's got that hope in his voice, the same hope that drove millions of black Americans north during the Great Migration.
So tell me about Chicago. I heard they ain't got Jim Crow up there.
And Smoke just shatters that myth with one sentence.
Chicago ain't shit but Mississippi with tall buildings instead of plantation.
Now this line is very important. The twins are not running away from racism. They have seen both the versions of it. The loud, violent southern kind and the quiet, systemic northern kind. And they have decided to come back home and build their own kingdom on their own terms. They'd rather deal with the devils they know.
Preacher boy, I'm gonna wash up first. Walked here.
You're beautiful. I just want to taste you.
The twins start putting their crew together for the juke joint, and every person they recruit represents a different wound in the black southern experience. There's Delta Slim. He is a piano player and storyteller. He tells them about his musical partner who was castrated by the Klan. Think about this for a second. The Klan didn't just lynch black people, they specifically targeted black musicians because they understood that music was power and music was identity. Destroying a musician was destroying a community's soul. Then there's Mary. She is a really interesting character because she is a black woman who can pass as white. She's also Stack's ex-lover, and she is angry at him not just because he left, but because he left her alone to deal with that dangerous situation by herself. And the fact that she shows up at this black juke joint means she is risking everything. Her character shows the mental and emotional cost of trying to fit in. The price you pay when you have to hide who you really are just to stay alive. And then there's the Chow family. They are Chinese grocers who supply the liquor. At first, this might feel random, but it's actually rooted in history. In the early 1900s, the Mississippi Delta had a noticeable Chinese immigrant population, and many of them ran grocery stores and lived in this strange in-between space in the segregated South. Not white, not black, just trying to survive in a system that never really had a place for them. So Coogler doesn't just throw people in there for, diversity points. That is not true at all. Every single character represents a real historical experience. Okay, so now let's talk about Reik. He is this Irish immigrant vampire, and he might be one of the smartest antagonist I've seen in years. Reik is turning from Choctaw hunters when we first meet him. He finds a poor white couple, Bert and Joan, and he turns them. And here's the key point. When they turn into vampires, they don't lose their personalities. They still talk the same way, they still have the southern accent. But their loyalty now lies with the hive mind. Reik represents something very specific. He is the assimilation monster. See, the Irish were oppressed in America. They faced discrimination, violence. They were called slurs, treated as less than human. But they had one option that black Americans didn't have. They could become white. The Irish eventually assimilated into whiteness by aligning themselves with the oppressor class, by becoming cops, by enforcing the system, and Reik represents that choice. He was once a victim, but then he chooses to become a predator just to survive, just to stay alive. And when Reik finally appears at the juke joint, he needs an invitation to walk in. Now this is a classic vampire rule, right? But Coogler is trying to say something very, very deep. Black spaces are safe as long as they stay black spaces. The moment a white outsider force is let in, even under pressure, even with good intentions, that's when things start to fall apart. And this is exactly what happened in this film.
Preacher boy, where you at? Come on here, man.
Okay, so let's talk about the musical sequence, and this might be one of the most ambitious sequences in a film this year. Sammy gets on stage and starts playing I Lied to You. And as he plays, the camera starts doing this slow, continuous orbit around the room, and the walls of the sawmill start to dissolve. Suddenly you're seeing West African drummers, 1970s funk basses, 1990s hip-hop DJs, ballet dancers, all performing alongside the 1930s blues musicians. The roof catches fire, but it's not a real fire. It's the Holy Ghost. It's the fire that Choctaw firekeepers channel. What Coogler is showing you here is that black music is literally time travel. Everything from spiritual to jazz to hip-hop to funk, it's all connected. They are all one continuous conversation across time. Sammy isn't just playing a song, he's summoning his ancestors and calling to his descendants simultaneously. And this is a signal that Reik detects from miles away. And Reik is obsessed with stealing cultures. He doesn't just want to feed on blood. He wants to feed, or he wants to steal your stories.
I want your stories. And I want your songs. And you gonna have mine.
He wants the songs, he wants the music, he wants everything that he lost when he gave up his Irish identity just to become a predator. The vampires in this movie, they can't create. They can only consume and mimic. When Reik performed that aggressive Irish jig later in the film, it feels like a twisted parody of cultural exchange. It shows the difference between genuine inspiration and straight up appropriation. Why is it a cultural appropriation? Because this is what the vampires do. They steal cultures, they strip off its meaning and context and use it for power or dominance. So when the vampires are dancing on the song Rocky Road, they are not honoring the Irish culture. They are using it as a weapon.
Sorry I couldn't keep you safe. Don't be sorry. You always did.
Now let's talk about Smoke and Stack. And even though they are, very identical, they represent completely different philosophies. Smoke is pragmatic. He's the businessman. He's the one who demands US dollars instead of company script. He sees the world as it is and makes cold, calculated decisions to survive in it. He is Earth. Stack is the dreamer. He's the one who convinces Smoke to accept the script to build community trust. He believes in the possibility of something better. He's the one who still loves Mary even though she abandoned her blackness. So Stack is air. And here's what's tragic. They need each other. Smoke without Stack is just capitalism. Stack without Smoke is just fantasy. Together they represent the full spectrum of great migration. The question of whether you stay and fight or leave and fly. Now the fact that Michael B. Jordan plays both the character, this is not a casting gimmick. It's actually very, very thematic. These aren't two separate people. They are the two halves of the same consciousness. Two possible responses to the same trauma. I don't think I can explain it any better. And the way they pulled this off technically is genuinely mind-blowing. VFX supervisor Michael created this custom rig called the Halo rig. It's a lightweight carbon fiber ring with 12 cameras. Jordan would perform as one twin, then immediately put on the rig and do a 360-degree facial capture for the other twin. And then they'd graft his face onto a body double using machine learning. So this wasn't motion control or split screen. The twins were actually there. There were two bodies, they were, fighting, they were hugging. And this is just cutting edge technology, which is used just for better storytelling.
So you rob trains and banks, but you can't steal this pussy for a night.
Now Mary's arc is very, very heartbreaking. She makes every decision with, good intentions and still ends up being the Trojan horse that destroys everything. When Reik shows up at the door, Smoke refuses to let them in, but Mary steps outside. She thinks she can negotiate. She spent years passing for white, navigating white spaces, and she believes she has some kind of immunity, some kind of leverage. But Reik doesn't see her as white or black. He just sees food and he turns her into a vampire. And here's where it gets brutal. Mary doesn't attack immediately. She comes back into the club, she seduces Stack, and she bites him during sex. It's an intimate betrayal. The person you love the most weaponized against you. This is actually very, very sad.
Yo, smell anything?
No.
I think I shot myself.
Okay, so moving on forward, the production designer shared a very, very good detail with us. Production designer Hannah painted all the ceilings and the porches with Haint blue. If you don't know, Haint blue is this specific shade of light blue that the Galagichi people use to ward off spirits. The belief is that Haints, which are restless ghosts, they can't cross water, and the blue tricks them into thinking the ceiling is water. And it is all over the film. The ceilings, the window frames, it is supposed to protect them. And here's what happened in the film. When the vampires attacked them, Annie realizes that they aren't Haints.
These ain't hates. They're vampires.
And that's the tragedy. The traditional spiritual defenses of the Black South don't work on this European evil. Reik doesn't play by the local rules. He's a colonizer virus. He's bringing a completely different system of violence. So the community has to adapt. They use different kind of methods. They use garlic. They use silver. They are using guns. And they are improvising. And that improvisation is a metaphor for the shift from spiritual resistance to political resistance that happened in the 20th century. The ancestors' magic is not useless. It's just not enough anymore. You need the old ways and the new ways to survive.
I sensed you. I want to see my people again. I'm trapped here.
There's a moment in the siege where Reik makes his pitch. He's still outside, still unable to enter without an invitation. And he says that vampirism is the cure for racism. In the hive mind, there's no Jim Crow. Everyone is equal because everyone is the same. No identity, no culture, just the collective. And this is the film's most cutting critic of this liberal politics. That the solution to racism is for everyone to give up their culture and blend into this collective, neutral, colorless mass. Reik is offering them immortality and equality, but the cost is their humanity, their individuality, their stories and songs. And what's brilliant is that Reik himself is a victim of this. He gave up his Irish identity. And now he's empty and he wants to fill that void by stealing other people's culture. The film is trying to say that equality doesn't come from erasure. It comes when you let people be fully themselves. The juke joint is a space where Chinese grocers and black musicians and people passing for white can all exist together without losing who they are. That's the real integration and not the hive mind. After this, the vampire threatened to go to the Chow family's house and kill their daughter. Grace panics and screams for them to come inside. That's the invitation. And the vampires swarm in. What follows is chaos. Everybody got killed, Delta sacrifices himself, and Annie gets bitten by Stack. And this is where Smoke makes the hardest choice in the film. He kills Annie before she can fully turn. He saves her soul but destroys his own heart. Think about what that means. Annie and Smoke were estranged, they lost a child, and their marriage was broken. And in her final moments, he gave her mercy. He doesn't try to save her body, he lets her go. And this moment is connected to the climax of the film. Right before Smoke dies, he has this vision. He sees Annie and their infant daughter. He's smoking a cigarette and he puts it out so he can hold the baby. That gesture, putting out the cigarette, it's a whole moment of purification. Smoke lived his whole life as a man of violence, as someone who made hard choices, but in the final moment with his family, he's gentle, he's clean. The film is telling you that doesn't matter how much dirt you accumulate while you try to survive. There's always something pure inside of you. There's always something worth saving.
Look at that sky. That's a mighty fine day to be free, ain't it?
By the way, something very opposite or something very strange happened in the fight between Smoke and Stack. Smoke fights his vampire brother and he wins. He's stronger, he's got Stack pinned, he could kill him, but he can't do it. So he makes Stack promise to leave and never hunt Sammy, and he lets him go. This is the opposite of Mercy killing Annie. With Annie, he ended her suffering. With Stack, he's sentencing him to an eternity of suffering because he can't let go. And maybe that's the right choice or maybe it's the wrong choice, but it's human. It's what love looks like when it's tangled up with grief and guilt and history. Stack and Mary, they disappear in the night and you realize that they are going to live forever, frozen at that age, unable to die and unable to truly live.
Club Juke, huh? Grand opening, grand closing.
Sammy smashes his guitar into Reik. Smoke stakes him with a piece of juke joint itself, the timber from the building they built, their kingdom. And as the sun comes up, the lesser vampires burn. But the human monsters arrive right on schedule. Hogwood and the clan shows up, expecting to lynch the brothers. And Smoke alone, mortally wounded, ambushes them with a Tommy gun. He massacres the clan, but he's bleeding out. And this is when he lights that one last cigarette and he sees that vision, Annie and the baby. He puts out the cigarette to hold her and he dies. The film is making a statement here. Smoke survived the vampires, but the real monsters, the humans, he couldn't survive them. They still got him in the end. Because the supernatural horror was never the central point of the film. It was always about the system, the structure. The clan is still the clan, whether they are vampires or not.
I guess I was one person he just couldn't kill. He made me promise to stay away from you. Let you live out your life.
60 years later, an elderly Sammy is closing up his club in Chicago and Stack and Mary walk in. They haven't aged a day. They are dressed in 1990s fashion. They offer Sammy the gift one more time, immortality, an end to aging and pain, and Sammy says no. He chose to age, to suffer, to lose people, to grieve, but he also chose to live in the sun, to feel time passing, to be human. That's the thesis of this film. Freedom isn't about immortality. Freedom is about that brief, beautiful moment when you're truly yourself, with your people, with the people you love, and you're making something real. Stack has money, he has eternal life, but he has no reflection, he's hollow. Sammy grew old, he suffered, he lost everyone he loved, but he lived. And the film tells you which one made the right choice. If you walked out of Sinners thinking it was just a vampire movie, I hope this video showed you how much more was happening under the surface. This film is about choices, the choice between the North and the South, between humanity and immortality, between assimilation and identity, between the church and the blues. And the film's answer is always the same. Real freedom is the freedom to be yourself, even if it is for a few hours. Smoke and Stack built their juke joint knowing it wouldn't last, knowing the vampires or the clan or the economics of Jim Crow would eventually tear it down. But for one night, they had something real. They had community, they had music, they had each other. And that was enough. Stack got immortality and Smoke got to die free. And the film asks you which one you'd choose, and it doesn't judge you for that, and this is what makes this film a masterpiece.